December 11th. The rest of the afternoon was spent poring over the scraps of paper that had fallen out of the calendar. Joaquin put them in the right order so Mama and Papa could read the story. As they read, Papa said, "That's the strangest thing I've ever heard. I wonder how many calendars like this there are." "I've never seen anything like it," said Mama. "Imagine bringing home this Advent calendar, Joaquin." When it was evening, Joaquin had to go to bed. He sat for a long time staring at the calendar, and it happened again. It happened again! On the big picture calendar, there were many angels hovering in the sky, and Joaquin had seen that before, but today he discovered that one of them was a cherub. He was quite sure. "Mama! Papa!" Both of them came rushing in. They were obviously afraid that something dreadful had happened. "I can see the angel Imperial." Mama and Papa turned. Perhaps they thought he had been visited by an angel. And Joaquin asked them to look at the picture carefully. "Can you see anything you haven't seen before?" They peered at the picture. Papa said he might not have noticed everything when the bookseller gave them the calendar. He was so flustered he left his driver's license on the counter. For instance, he hadn't noticed that one of the shepherds was holding a shepherd's crook. I don't think I had noticed the little angel either. Of course not, because he hasn't been there till now. And that's because it's a magic Advent calendar. Joaquin, there's no reason to exaggerate. He always liked to seem the most sensible. The last thing Joaquin thought about before he fell asleep was that one of the angels in heaven was called Joaquiel, almost the same as himself. The next morning, Joaquin opened the 11th door in the Advent calendar. He had to coax the thin piece of paper out before he discovered the picture of a horse and rider. He made himself comfortable under the covers and began to read. Today he did not need to be afraid that Mama and Papa would catch him red-handed, because the secret pieces of paper weren't a secret anymore. Balthazar. 5 sheep, 2 shepherds, 2 angels, 1 king of the Orient, and a little girl from Norway were speeding up the valley of the Rhine 1,199 years after Jesus was born. They could just glimpse a church tower on the other side of the river. Imperial told them that was the main cathedral. They paused to discuss the situation. "We have to cross the river, and that's a pity, because we shall have to frighten another poor ferryman and explain that we're pilgrims on our way to the Holy Land. We shall have to try to do it gently," said Imperial. "I can see a boat down there," Imperial exclaimed. He flew high in the air, beating his wings in the direction of the boat, with the rest of the procession after him. But Imperial was already talking to the man who was sitting on the riverbank. "Can you row us across? We're on our way to Bethlehem, and we don't have much time. We're on a godly errand, you see." Imperial hurried after him. When he caught up with Imperial, he nodded apologetically at the ferryman. Then he turned to Imperial. "How many times do I have to remind you that first of all you say 'fear not'?" But the ferryman, who was splendidly dressed in a long red cloak, was not scared of the cherub. He turned to Imperial. "My name is Balthazar, 2nd wise man and king of Sheba. I am going the same way as you." "Then you are one of us." Still, he scolded Imperial a little. "This time things turned out well, but you must always start by saying 'fear not.' Don't you realize that many people are terribly frightened when they see one of the angels of the Lord?" "Sorry," said Imperial. All right. But isn't it odd that they should be so frightened just because they've seen an angel? I've never so much as harmed a cat. On the contrary, I couldn't count all the times I've helped a poor cat down from a tree. Of course, cats ought to learn once and for all not to climb so high. But when we do come and help them, they're not the tiniest bit frightened. It's always humans who seem terribly nervous." The 2 wise men embraced. "It's been a long time, and it was a very, very long way from the Rhine. But it's very, very, very pleasant to see you again." They had their arms around each other, so it was not easy to say who had said what. But now the whole procession boarded the boat. The kings of the Orient each took an oar and rowed across the river, which was almost as wide as the stretch of the ocean. On the other side, Imperial pointed at the beautiful cathedral. It seemed a little squatter and did not have as tall a tower as many of the others. The year is 1186 after Christ. Work on this cathedral began more than 200 years ago. At that time, almost 1,000 years had passed since the one seed was sown in the earth that would find that a field of churches and cathedrals would grow across the whole world. A whole field of churches called Imperial. It would be fun to work out how much stone and timber had been used to celebrate Jesus' birth, not to mention how many cakes have been baked and presents have been wrapped. Christmas is the world's biggest birthday party because everybody in the world is invited. That's why the party has lasted for thousands of years. Joshua struck the ground with his crook of his staff and said, "To Bethlehem, to Bethlehem." The pilgrims hurried along the west bank of the Rhine. It was very early in the morning, so that very few people would be scared by them. But when they tumbled into the town of Worms in the year of our Lord 1162, they met a rider on horseback. Perhaps he was a soldier who had been out on a night duty. The angel Imperial flew over to the man, beat his wings, and repeated, "Fear not, fear not, fear not." Even though he buzzed around the soldier like an excited bumblebee and said, "Fear not," an enormous number of times, the poor man was extremely scared. He didn't even have time to say, "Alleluia," or "God be praised." Imperial shook his head in despair and tried to teach the cherub once more. "You only need to say it once, but you must say it in a gentle, soft, heavenly voice. Fear not. It's a good idea to keep your arms down, too." Balthazar, the wise man, pointed up at the cathedral with 6 towers. Everywhere and at all times, people have stretched their arms out to God. The church towers point up to heaven, too, but they last much longer. The shepherds bent their heads respectfully at these wise words, and then Joshua said, "To Bethlehem, to Bethlehem." In the city of Basel, on the southern bank of the Rhine, they stopped in front of another cathedral. 1,119 years have passed since the Christ child was born, announced Imperial. This cathedral with 5 naves has just celebrated its centenary, but for hundreds of years Basel has been an important crossroads for travelers who journey through the Alps between Italy and northern Europe. We are going to follow the same route over the St. Bernard Pass. "To Bethlehem," said Joshua, "to Bethlehem." Whereupon they set off through the Swiss mountains. Joachim sat in bed thinking about the strange pilgrimage to Bethlehem. After a while, Mama and Papa came in to read the piece of paper. Yesterday they had talked about the calendar almost the whole afternoon. "We took home a small miracle from the bookstore, didn't we, Joachim? Can you imagine how it was made?" "I think John made it. The